My name is Corinne, and at 43 years old, I watched my daughter Jessica stand up at her graduation dinner and shatter my heart with just a few words. "You contributed nothing. Stop pretending you deserve to be here," she announced to the entire table. I smiled politely, hiding my pain. By morning, her college fund was empty, replaced with a simple note. "Earn it yourself." A harsh lesson, perhaps. But sometimes, the hardest lessons are the most important ones. Before I begin my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you've ever had to teach your child a difficult lesson about gratitude, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about the challenges of parenthood. Before Jessica was born, I had dreams just like any young woman. I was 22, halfway through my bachelor's degree in accounting, and working part-time at a local restaurant to pay my bills. My life stretched before me with possibilities I never had growing up. My parents had always struggled financially, and I was the first in my family to attend college. Every class felt like a step toward the secure future I craved. Then I met Andrew. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed to value my determination. We dated for 8 months before I discovered I was pregnant. When I told him, I expected concern, maybe even fear, but what I got was rejection. Andrew claimed he wasn't ready for fatherhood, that a baby would derail his career plans. Within a week, he had packed his things and left our apartment, leaving me with an extra portion of rent I could barely afford. I spent 3 days crying, then wiped my tears and faced reality. I was going to be a mother alone. The pregnancy was difficult. Morning sickness kept me from working full shifts, and my grades suffered as I battled exhaustion. By my second trimester, I had to make the heartbreaking decision to put my education on hold. My manager at the restaurant was kind enough to give me more hours when I felt well enough to work, but tips were unpredictable. After Jessica was born, my world narrowed to 2 objectives: caring for my daughter and keeping a roof over our heads. I found a job as a receptionist at a dental office during the day and continued at the restaurant 3 nights a week. My mother watched Jessica when she could, but her own health was failing. Most of my paycheck went to a babysitter, leaving precious little for savings. Our first apartment was a tiny 1-bedroom in a neighborhood that made me double-check the locks at night. Jessica slept in a crib beside my bed. I would often stay awake watching her breathe, overwhelmed by love and terror in equal measure. How would I give this perfect child everything she deserved? When Jessica was 3, I developed a persistent cough that wouldn't go away. Without health insurance, I ignored it until I nearly collapsed during a dinner shift. The diagnosis was pneumonia, and the medical bills wiped out what little savings I had managed to accumulate. I received treatment only because the emergency room couldn't turn me away. But the antibiotics I needed afterward meant choosing between medicine and groceries that month. Despite everything, I started a college fund for Jessica when she was 4. It began with just $20 from each paycheck, which often meant walking to work instead of taking the bus, or eating nothing but ramen noodles for dinner after Jessica went to bed. As the years passed, I increased the amount whenever possible. By the time she started elementary school, I had secured a better-paying position as an office manager at a small law firm, which allowed us to move to a safer 2-bedroom apartment. Every milestone in Jessica's life filled me with indescribable pride. Her first day of kindergarten, I took a rare morning off work to walk her to class, memorizing the way her small hand felt in mine. When she learned to read, I would sit beside her bed each night, listening to her sound out words, marveling at her intelligence. For her 8th birthday, I worked overtime for a month to buy her a bicycle, then spent weekends in the park teaching her to ride. Whenever I felt exhausted from working 60-hour weeks, I would look at Jessica and find renewed strength. I made a solemn promise to myself that she would have opportunities I never had. She would attend college, without the constant financial stress that had forced me to abandon my own education. She would pursue her dreams without compromise. As Jessica grew, so did her college fund. Every birthday check from my parents went straight into the account. When I received a small inheritance after my mother's passing, I put most of it toward Jessica's future keeping, only enough to replace our ancient refrigerator that had stopped working. I skipped doctor's appointments for myself, wore shoes until they developed holes, and never took vacations. Every sacrifice seemed worth it when I imagined Jessica walking across a stage to receive her college diploma. Jessica was a bright, curious child with an infectious laugh. During her early years, we were inseparable. Despite my exhaustion after long workdays, I would still make time to read her stories, help with homework, or simply listen to her excited chatter about school. Those moments were precious to me, small islands of joy in an otherwise relentless schedule. As a single mother with limited resources, I couldn't provide Jessica with many luxuries, but I gave her my unwavering support. When she expressed interest in science in 4th grade, I found free programs at the local library and museum. When she wanted to join the school choir, I rearranged my work schedule to attend every performance sitting in the audience with a disposable camera beaming with pride. Jessica consistently earned top grades, and parent-teacher conferences were moments of pure joy. Her teachers praised her intelligence, work ethic, and kind nature. I would return home from these meetings and place her report cards in a special box, tangible proof that despite our circumstances, my daughter was thriving. The shift began subtly when Jessica entered middle school. One day, I picked her up wearing my office manager's uniform after a long shift. As we walked toward the car, I noticed her scanning the parking lot nervously. "Mom, could you wait in the car tomorrow?" Jessica asked suddenly. I was caught off guard. "Why, honey?" Just because she replied, quickening her pace. It wasn't until later that I realized she had been embarrassed by my appearance. My sensible shoes and department store clearance rack clothes didn't match the designer outfits worn by many other parents at her new school. It was the first sting of many to come. By 8th grade, Jessica had formed a tight friendship with a girl named Amber Wilson. The Wilsons lived in the affluent part of town. Mr. Wilson was a successful attorney, and Mrs. Wilson was a former marketing executive who had chosen to be a stay-at-home mother. Their house had 5 bedrooms, a swimming pool, and a dedicated home theater room, something Jessica described in awestruck detail after her first visit. Whenever Jessica returned from the Wilsons' home, she would be uncharacteristically quiet, her eyes taking in our modest apartment with what appeared to be new criticism. Our furniture, much of it second-hand, suddenly seemed shabby to her. The meals I prepared after work were compared unfavorably to Mrs. Wilson's gourmet cooking. "I want to take cooking classes," I overheard Jessica tell a friend on the phone. "My mom just makes basic stuff. She doesn't know about real cuisine." Each comment was a small paper cut to my heart, but I told myself it was normal teenage behavior. All adolescents go through a phase of finding their parents embarrassing, right? High school accelerated the growing distance between us. Jessica joined the debate team, student council, and honor society. Her academic achievements continued to make me proud, but increasingly, she excluded me from her school life. When she won a prestigious essay contest in sophomore year, she didn't tell me about the award ceremony until the morning of the event. "Could you maybe wear that black dress you have?" Jessica asked hesitantly as I scrambled to rearrange my work schedule. "And maybe put your hair up." I spent my lunch break getting a rushed manicure I couldn't afford and buying a new pair of shoes with my emergency credit card. Despite my efforts when I arrived at the ceremony, Jessica introduced me to her teachers with visible reluctance. "Mom, this is Mr. Harrington, my English teacher," she said quickly before moving away to talk with Amber. Throughout her junior year, Jessica spent more and more time at the Wilsons' residence. Weekend sleepovers became regular occurrences. Soon, she was having dinner with them 3 or 4 times a week, returning home just before bedtime with stories about their sophisticated conversations and family game nights. Mrs. Wilson took Jessica and Amber shopping for homecoming dresses while I was working. She helped them prepare for PSAT exams with expensive prep books I couldn't afford. Mr. Wilson spoke with Jessica about colleges and career paths, drawing on connections I didn't have. Slowly, they were becoming the parents Jessica wished she had educated, affluent, and available in ways I couldn't be, despite my best efforts. Mom, the Wilsons invited me to go with them to their lake house this weekend, Jessica announced one Thursday evening. Her eyes shone with excitement. They have a boat. That's the third weekend this month you've spent with them, I said carefully. I was hoping we could have some time together. Maybe see that movie you've been talking about? Jessica rolled her eyes. We've seen movies a million times. This is different. It's an experience. She emphasized the last word with reverence. I know, sweetie, but I miss you, I admitted. The Wilsons get so much of your time lately. Her expression hardened. Well, they have time for me, she snapped. You're always working or too tired? The accusation stung because there was truth in it. I was often exhausted juggling multiple responsibilities to keep our lives afloat. But Jessica couldn't or wouldn't see that my fatigue was the direct result of providing for her. Despite numerous attempts to reconnect with my daughter, invitations to lunch, offers to help with schoolwork, even suggesting we take a weekend trip to the coast, she consistently chose the Wilsons' company over mine. Each rejection reinforced the growing fear that I was losing her, not just to normal teenage independence, but to a family that could offer her everything I couldn't. The day Jessica received her acceptance letter from Princeton University was one of mixed emotions for me. Pride swelled in my chest as she tore open the envelope and screamed with delight. Her hard work had paid off, and she would have opportunities I could only dream about. But there was also a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Princeton was expensive even with financial aid, and I worried about whether the college fund I'd built over 17 years would be enough. That evening, as Jessica texted friends about her acceptance, I sat down with her to discuss finances. Honey, I want to talk about college costs. I began pulling out the folder where I kept all the information about her fund. Jessica barely glanced up from her phone. The Wilsons already talked to me about it. Mr. Wilson says with my grades and extracurriculars I should qualify for some scholarships. I still want to show you what I've been saving. I persisted, opening the folder to reveal bank statements. For 17 years, I've been putting money aside for your education. It's not enough for all 4 years, but it should cover most of your first 2 years if we're careful. For the first time, Jessica looked at the papers, her expression unreadable. You've been saving for my college? She asked, as if the concept was completely foreign. Of course I have, I replied, surprised by her reaction. Since you were 4 years old. Every birthday gift from Grandma, every tax refund, every small raise I've gotten, most of it went into this account. Jessica quickly scanned the most recent statement, and I waited for some acknowledgement of the sacrifice this represented. Instead, she simply said, Oh, so that's what you mean by saying you've been saving. I thought it would be more. The casual dismissal of 17 years of disciplined saving nearly took my breath away. I had expected at least some recognition of what this fund represented: countless overtime hours, years without vacations, foregoing new clothes and medical care for myself. Well, Mr. Wilson says college is an investment, Jessica continued, returning to her phone. He says if we need to take out some loans to cover the difference, it's worth it for a Princeton degree. Her use of "we" stung. The Wilsons would not be contributing a penny toward her education, yet they were positioning themselves as partners in this investment. I had been the one making real sacrifices for nearly 2 decades. As graduation approached, Jessica became increasingly focused on having the perfect celebration like everyone else. By everyone else, she meant Amber and her wealthy friends, whose parents were planning lavish parties, expensive gifts, and European vacations as graduation presents. "Mom, everyone is having a special dinner at Costello's after graduation," Jessica informed me one evening. "It's tradition. Costello's was the most expensive restaurant in our area where entrees started at $50. A dinner for even a small group would cost hundreds of dollars." "That's quite expensive, honey," I said carefully. "Maybe we could find somewhere nice, but more moderate." Jessica looked at me as if I'd suggested eating at a fast food restaurant. "It's my graduation, Mom. One night. Can't you just do this one thing without being cheap?" I flinched at the accusation, but kept my voice steady. "I'm not being cheap. I'm being realistic about our finances, especially with college coming up." "You just don't want me to have what my friends have," she retorted. "You never have." The unfairness of this statement burned, but I swallowed my hurt. "I'll see what I can do," I promised. Over the next month, I picked up extra shifts and canceled my cell phone plan, switching to a cheaper prepaid option. I skipped lunches and sold some jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother. Eventually, I saved enough to make a reservation at Costello's for Jessica, and 8 guests, the number she insisted was necessary to include her close friends, favorite teachers, and the Wilsons. As graduation drew nearer, Jessica's criticism of me intensified. She coached me on how to dress, how to speak, and even how to eat at fancy restaurants. "Please don't talk about your job, Mom," she instructed while we shopped for a dress for me to wear to the ceremony. "And try not to use slang. It's embarrassing." When had my normal speech patterns become slang? I wondered silently. "And when we meet the dean, let me do most of the talking," Jessica added. "Just smile and nod." The night before graduation, I prepared a special dinner at home, hoping to have a quiet celebration, just the two of us before the public events. I made her favorite lasagna from scratch and bought a small cake with "Congratulations, Jessica" written in blue icing. Jessica came home only long enough to collect her graduation outfit. "Mom, I told you I'm staying at Amber's tonight," she reminded me, eyeing the dinner table with impatience. "All the girls are getting ready together in the morning. Mrs. Wilson is arranging for a hairstylist and makeup artist to come to their house. I thought maybe we'd have a quick dinner first," I said, gesturing to the food. "Just us?" Jessica sighed dramatically. "I really can't. We have plans." She grabbed her overnight bag and headed for the door. "I'll see you at the ceremony. Second row on the right side, remember? Not the front row that's reserved for parents of the valedictorian and school board members." Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me alone with a cooling lasagna and an untouched cake. I sat at the table for a long time, wondering when exactly I had become someone my daughter wanted to hide rather than celebrate with. The morning of Jessica's graduation dawned bright and clear. I woke early, giving myself extra time to get ready. I'd splurged on a hair appointment the previous afternoon and purchased a new dress, navy blue and conservative, exactly as Jessica had specified. I wanted everything to be perfect for her big day. The high school auditorium was already crowded when I arrived. I spotted the reserved section Jessica had mentioned and made my way to the second row. As I sat down, I noticed the Wilson family settling into the front row, despite not having a child who was valedictorian. Wilson was wearing an expensive suit, and Mrs. Wilson looked elegant in a designer dress I had seen in a magazine. They were chatting comfortably with the principal and school board members. I felt a momentary impulse to say hello, but remembered Jessica's instruction to stay in my assigned seat. So I sat quietly, clutching the bouquet of flowers I'd brought, watching other families greet each other with hugs and excited conversations. When the ceremony began, I craned my neck to see Jessica as the graduates filed in. She looked beautiful in her cap and gown, her face serious and proud. I wanted to catch her eye to share a smile that said, "I'm so proud of you," but her gaze swept past me, as if I were a stranger. As the valedictorian, Jessica delivered a speech that left me blinking back tears. She spoke eloquently about perseverance, ambition, and the support systems that help students succeed. She thanked her teachers by name, acknowledged the school administration, and gave a special thanks to the Wilson family for being her second home. I kept waiting for a mention of me, even a brief acknowledgement of the mother who had raised her alone, who had worked multiple jobs to provide for her, who had built her college fund dollar by dollar. But the mention never came. As the audience applauded her speech, I clapped until my palms hurt, swallowing my hurt. After the ceremony, I navigated through the crowd clutching my flowers and a small gift bag containing a journal I'd splurged on from an upscale bookstore. I finally spotted Jessica, surrounded by friends, and the Wilson family, all posing for photos. "Jessica," I called, waving. "Congratulations." She glanced over with a tight smile. "Mom, you're here," she said, as if surprised, despite the detailed instructions she'd given me about where to sit. "Can you wait just a minute? We're getting some pictures." I stood awkwardly to the side, watching as Mrs. Wilson straightened Jessica's cap, and Mr. Wilson put his arm around her shoulder like a proud father. They took dozens of photos in various combinations, Jessica with Amber, with teachers, with the debate team coach. No one suggested including me. Finally, Jessica approached. "We need to head to Costello's now to make our reservation," she said briskly. "Do you remember how to get there?" "Of course," I replied, extending the flowers toward her. "These are for you." "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." She accepted the bouquet with a distracted thanks and handed it immediately to Mrs. Wilson. "Can you put these in water at your house? I'll pick them up tomorrow." Before I could give her the journal, she was whisked away by her friends, leaving me standing alone among scattered chairs and discarded programs. The drive to Costello's was silent as I practiced what I would say during the dinner. I wanted to find the right words to express my pride without sounding overly emotional, which I knew embarrassed Jessica. I rehearsed anecdotes that wouldn't mortify her, and reminders to use the correct fork for each course. Costello's was intimidating with its white tablecloths and crystal chandeliers. The hostess led me to a large round table already half occupied by the Wilson family, 2 of Jessica's teachers, and 3 of her closest friends. Jessica sat between Amber and Mrs. Wilson, engaged in animated conversation. I took the empty seat across from her next to Mr. Harrington, her English teacher. As the waiter poured water, I smiled at Jessica, hoping to catch her attention. She gave me a quick nod before returning to her conversation with Mrs. Wilson about dorm room essentials for Princeton. Throughout the appetizer course, I remained mostly silent, listening to discussions about summer plans, college preparations, and inside jokes I wasn't part of, when Mr. Harrington kindly asked about my work. Jessica interrupted before I could answer. "My mom works in office management," she said quickly, her tone suggesting this was the most boring topic imaginable. "Mr. Wilson, did you ever hear back about that internship possibility at your firm's New York office?" The main course arrived, and I focused on cutting my expensive steak into tiny pieces, feeling increasingly invisible. Jessica was shining so brightly, confidently discussing literature with her English teacher, debating current events with Mr. Wilson, laughing at Amber's stories. She was in her element among these accomplished, educated people. I should have felt only pride, but there was an undercurrent of pain watching her flourish in a world that seemed to have no place for me. As dessert was served, Mr. Wilson raised his glass in a toast. To Jessica, he said warmly, "Princeton won't know what hit it. We've watched you grow into an extraordinary young woman, and we couldn't be prouder if you were our own daughter." Everyone clinked glasses as Jessica beamed at him. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You and Mrs. Wilson have shown me what it's like to be part of a real family. I wouldn't be here without your guidance." The words sliced through me like a knife. A real family, as if what she and I had built together over 18 years wasn't real. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was her day. My feelings didn't matter right now. But then, Jessica continued, emboldened by the approving smiles around her. "It's true," she said, looking around the table but carefully avoiding my eyes. "Some people are just biologically related to you, but real family are the people who contribute to your growth and success." The table fell uncomfortably silent. Everyone seemed to suddenly find their dessert fascinating. I felt heat rising in my cheeks but maintained my composure. Then Jessica turned to me, her eyes hard with a challenge. "You know, Mom," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the awkward silence, "I sometimes wonder why you even came today." "Honey?" I stammered, shocked by the direct attack. "Of course I wanted to be here." "I'm your mother." She gave a short, dismissive laugh that I had never heard from her before. Right. My mother. The woman who was too busy working to ever attend a single debate competition. Who never volunteered for school functions like Amber's mom. Who doesn't even understand what the Ivy League is. The table was dead silent now. I could feel everyone's eyes darting between us, witnessing my public humiliation. "Jessica, that's enough," Mr. Harrington said gently, but she was on a roll. "You contributed nothing," Jessica announced, her voice rising. "Stop pretending you deserve to be here." The words hit me like physical blows. 17 years of sacrifice dismissed as nothing. Countless nights of helping with homework, nursing fevers, working multiple jobs, all erased with a single cruel statement. I could have broken down. I could have reminded her of everything I had sacrificed. I could have created a scene that would have confirmed her worst opinions about me. Instead, I smiled politely, placed my napkin beside my plate, and stood up. "Congratulations again on your graduation, Jessica," I said, my voice steady, despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Please excuse me." I walked out of the restaurant with my back straight and my head high. It wasn't until I reached my car that the tears came hot and fast, blurring my vision as I drove home alone. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, replaying Jessica's words over and over. You contributed nothing. How could she believe that? How had I failed so completely as a mother that my only child saw no value in everything I had given her? As I stared at the ceiling, memories flooded back. Jessica at 4, climbing into my lap with a book begging me to read just one more story, even though I was exhausted from a double shift. Jessica at 7, proudly showing me a drawing she had made of the two of us holding hands, stick figures labeled Mommy and me, with a big heart between them. Jessica at 10, bringing me breakfast in bed on my birthday, a bowl of cereal and slightly burnt toast that she had prepared all by herself. When had that loving child transformed into the young woman who had humiliated me at Costello's? Had I been so focused on providing financially that I had failed to teach her essential values? Had my determination to give her every opportunity created an entitled person who could not recognize sacrifice? By dawn, I had reached a painful conclusion. In my efforts to ensure Jessica had every advantage I hadn't, I had failed to give her something far more important, the understanding that privilege comes with responsibility, that financial support without gratitude creates entitlement rather than opportunity. I had protected her from the struggles that build character and cultivate appreciation. My greatest failure as a mother wasn't working too much or missing debate competitions. It was shielding Jessica from the reality of consequences. And now, on the cusp of adulthood, she was emotionally unprepared for the real world that awaited her. With a heavy heart, but newfound resolve, I got dressed and drove to the bank when it opened. The teller looked surprised when I asked to withdraw the entire balance of Jessica's college fund in cash, but I explained it was for tuition payment. "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer a cashier's check?" she asked. "That's a lot of cash to carry around." "I'm sure," I replied firmly. My daughter needs to physically see what has been saved for her. Back at home, I spread the cash across the kitchen table. Stacks of bills representing thousands of hours of overtime years, without vacations and countless small daily sacrifices. 17 years of putting Jessica's needs before my own. 17 years of contributing everything I possibly could. I found a notepad and wrote 5 simple words. Earn it yourself. No lengthy explanation, no angry accusations, just a clear message that it was time for Jessica to take responsibility for her own future. Then I placed the note in the center of the table, surrounded by the cash, and left for my shift at the law office. My hands trembled as I drove, and doubt crept in. Was I making a terrible mistake? Would this destroy what little relationship we still had? But deeper than my fear was the conviction that this was the most important lesson I could possibly teach my daughter now. Around noon, my phone began ringing. First, Mrs. Wilson, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Corinne Jessica just called us hysterical. She says you've emptied her college fund? There must be some mistake." "There is no mistake," I replied calmly. "Jessica needs to learn that actions and words have consequences. She made it very clear last night that she believes I have contributed nothing to her life. Now she has the opportunity to fund her education herself." "This is extremely irresponsible," Mrs. Wilson said. "The girl has worked hard for her future, and you're jeopardizing it over some perceived slight." "It wasn't a slight," I responded, my voice still level. "It was a public declaration that my years of sacrifice meant nothing to her. The money is still there. She can use it for tuition, but she'll need to acknowledge where it came from and show that she understands its value." After Mrs. Wilson hung up, the texts from Jessica began pouring in. "How could you do this? You can't just take my college money. This is illegal. I'll call the police." Each message was more frantic than the last, but I didn't respond. This was a lesson that required follow-through. If I backed down now, Jessica would learn that emotional manipulation could override consequences, and that would set a pattern for her adult life. My boss noticed my distraction and asked if everything was all right. For the first time in years, I shared some of my personal struggles. To my surprise, he was understanding and supportive. "Parenting isn't about being liked," he said. "It's about raising adults who can function in society. Sometimes, that means making painful decisions." His words reinforced my resolve. As painful as this was, I knew it was necessary. Jessica arrived at the law office where I worked just after 5 o'clock. Her eyes red and puffy from crying, her hair disheveled. She stormed past the receptionist and burst into the main office area, scanning the room until she spotted me at my desk. "How could you?" she shouted, drawing the attention of every person in the office. "That money was for my education." I remained seated, keeping my voice low and calm. "Jessica, this isn't the place for this discussion." "Well, where is the place?" she demanded. "You weren't home. You took my entire future and left a nasty note." My boss appeared from his office, alerted by the commotion. "Everything all right, Corinne?" he asked, giving Jessica a pointed look. "It's fine, Richard," I assured him. "My daughter and I are having a disagreement." "Well, take it outside." I gathered my purse and jacket and led Jessica to the small courtyard behind the building. Once we were alone, I turned to face her. "The money is still on the kitchen table," I said. "Every dollar I saved for 17 years. "You can't just take it back," Jessica cried. "It's mine." "Is it?" I asked quietly. "Last night, you told an entire table of people that I contributed nothing to your life. that I don't deserve to be part of your achievements. If I contributed nothing, then that money can't be yours, can it? Jessica ran her hands through her hair in frustration. It was just something I said. People say things they don't mean all the time, but you did mean it, Jessica. You meant it when you excluded me from your graduation preparations. You meant it when you thanked the Wilsons for being your real family. You meant it every time you were ashamed to introduce me to your friends. Tears streamed down her face, but I detected more anger than remorse. Fine, she spat. Keep your money. The Wilsons will help me. Unlike you, they actually care about my future. I shook my head sadly. They care about you? I'm sure, but they haven't saved for your education. They haven't worked 60-hour weeks for 17 years to build your college fund. They've given you emotional support, which is valuable, but they haven't made the financial sacrifices I have. Jessica stared at me, realization slowly dawning. You're seriously going to make me beg for my own college money? She asked incredulously. I'm not asking you to beg, I replied. I'm asking you to recognize the value of what you've been given. To understand that every dollar on that table represents hours of my life dedicated to your future. Hours I can never get back. Jessica turned away, her shoulders rigid with anger. I'll figure it out without you, she declared. I don't need your money or your guilt trips. As she walked away, I called after her. When you're ready to talk about this calmly, I'll be here. But Jessica didn't look back. Over the next few days, the story spread through our community. I received judgmental looks at the grocery store, and one of Jessica's former teachers crossed the street to avoid me. Jessica had apparently shared her version of events widely on social media, painting herself as the victim of a vindictive mother who had sabotaged her future out of spite. Mrs. Wilson called again, informing me that Jessica would be staying with them indefinitely. She delivered the news with barely concealed satisfaction, as if she'd won some competition I hadn't realized we were having. She's welcome to her belongings whenever she wants to collect them, I replied evenly. Jessica moved in with the Wilsons, permanently coming to our apartment only once to pack most of her clothes and personal items. She refused to speak to me during the 30 minutes she was there, working in stony silence as I sat in the living room, giving her space, but making it clear I was available if she wanted to talk. Online, Jessica was less restrained. I discovered through a coworker that she had posted a lengthy description of what she'd called my betrayal, garnering hundreds of sympathetic comments. She described me as jealous of her success and relationships with successful people like the Wilsons, claiming I had always held her back. Reading those words hurt more than anything she'd said at the restaurant. I had spent my entire adult life pushing her forward, sacrificing my own advancement to ensure hers. Yet I refused to post any defense of my actions. This wasn't about winning public opinion. It was about teaching Jessica a vital lesson about appreciation and responsibility. Meanwhile, Jessica was discovering that her academic achievements, impressive as they were, didn't guarantee full financial coverage for an Ivy League education. She received a partial scholarship from Princeton, but it covered less than half of the total cost. Student loans were available but would leave her with significant debt after graduation. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Jessica had taken a job as a barista at a coffee shop near the Wilsons' home. It was her first paid employment ever. According to the grapevine, she was struggling to adjust to the early morning shifts and demanding customers. Several times, she came home with tears of frustration, having never before experienced the challenges of service work. The Wilsons, for all their affection for Jessica, had not offered to pay her tuition. They provided room and board and emotional support, but expected her to handle her educational expenses herself through scholarships, loans, and work, either with my assistance or without it. As summer progressed, Jessica worked longer hours, picking up shifts whenever possible. She applied for additional scholarships, but most deadlines had already passed for the upcoming academic year. The reality of funding an elite education was proving more difficult than she'd anticipated. I made no attempt to contact her directly, believing she needed space to process her situation and draw her own conclusions. But I did send a brief email to her Princeton account letting her know that her room at home remained available if she ever wanted to return, and that I was open to discussion when she felt ready. She didn't respond, but the email tracking showed she had opened it multiple times. 6 months passed. Jessica had started her first semester at Princeton, juggling classes with a part-time job in the university library. I continued my routine at the law office, working steadily and keeping her room exactly as she had left it. The money from her college fund remained untouched in a new account I had opened, waiting for the moment when, or if, she'd understand the lesson behind my actions. On a chilly October afternoon, I was making a delivery to Princeton's campus. The law firm occasionally sent confidential documents to a professor in the political science department who consulted on legislative matters, and Eid volunteered for the task, knowing it might give me a glimpse of Jessica's new world. As I walked across the beautiful campus, admiring the historic buildings with their ivy-covered walls, I felt a mixture of pride and melancholy. Jessica belonged in this place of learning and opportunity. I'd always known she was destined for more than the limited horizons that had constrained my own life. Yet I couldn't share in her experience, couldn't ask about her classes, or friends, or professors. I had just delivered the package and was heading back to my car when I heard a familiar voice. "Mom." I turned to see Jessica standing a few yards away, books clutched to her chest, looking both surprised and uncertain. She was thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes, suggesting late nights of studying. "Hello, Jessica," I said softly, afraid to say more lest I break this fragile moment. She shifted awkwardly from foot to foot. "What are you doing here? Delivering some documents for work?" I explained, gesturing vaguely toward the political science building. "How are you?" She hesitated, then answered with unexpected honesty. "Tired. Really tired." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Students flowed around us, rushing to classes or study groups wrapped in scarves against the autumn chill. "Do you have time for coffee?" Jessica asked suddenly, the question clearly surprising her as much as it did me. "I'd make time," I replied carefully, trying not to sound too eager. She led me to a campus cafe where students hunched over laptops and textbooks, the air fragrant with espresso and cinnamon. We ordered and found a small table in the corner, our movements awkward with months of silence between us. "You look well," I offered once we were seated, though. In truth, she looked exhausted. Jessica gave a short, humorless laugh. "I look terrible. Everyone says so. My roommate keeps telling me to sleep more than 4 hours a night, but there's never enough time." I nodded, remembering my own brief college experience. "It's a tough adjustment," I acknowledged. She took a sip of her latte, then set the cup down with determination. "I saw you making that delivery. You could have just sent it by courier." "I could have," I admitted, "but I wanted to see the campus, to see where you are, to check up on me." She translated a hint of the old defensiveness creeping into her tone. "No," I corrected gently, "to see the place you worked so hard to reach." "I'm proud of you, Jessica, even if you don't believe that." She stared into her coffee cup. "Princeton is everything I dreamed it would be," she said after a long pause. "The classes, the professors, the history. But all those years of hearing college is the best time of your life. That's only true if you don't have to work 20 hours a week while taking a full course load. It is challenging," I agreed, careful not to sound patronizing. Jessica looked up at me, her eyes suddenly fierce. "You know what the hardest part is? Watching the other students who don't have to work, who can join clubs and go to events and study whenever they want because their parents are paying for everything. Students like I would have been if you hadn't taken my college fund." I met her gaze steadily. "If I'd given you that money after what you said at graduation, what lesson would you have learned? That you loved me unconditionally?" she retorted. "You already knew that," I countered. "What you didn't know was the value of work, of sacrifice, of appreciating what you're given instead of expecting it as your due. Jessica opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. After a moment, she spoke more quietly. My roommate Talia works too. Her parents are immigrants who run a small restaurant in Queens. They can only afford to pay for half her tuition, so she works to cover the rest. She paused, tracing the rim of her cup with one finger. Last week, she got a care package from them. Just some homemade cookies and a card with $50 inside. She cried when she opened it because she knows exactly how hard they worked for that $50. She knew what it represented. Our eyes met, and I saw the first glimmer of understanding. I used to think the Wilsons were the perfect parents, Jessica continued. They came to every debate competition, every award ceremony. They had time for family game nights and weekend trips. I was so jealous of Amber. But I prompted when she fell silent. But they never expected her to work for anything, Jessica admitted. And now she's at Stanford partying 4 nights a week and barely passing her classes because she's never had to try. Her parents are still paying for everything, including the apartment she shares off campus with her boyfriend. She took another sip of coffee, gathering her thoughts. When I first started working at the coffee shop this summer, I hated it. The early mornings, the rude customers coming home smelling like coffee grounds and syrup. I kept thinking this isn't fair. I shouldn't have to do this. Jessica looked directly at me. Then one day, this woman came in. She had 3 kids with her, all under 6, and she looked exhausted, like she'd been up all night. She ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu and let each kid pick out a cookie. When she paid, I could see her counting out coins from her purse, making sure she had enough. Jessica's voice softened. And suddenly, I saw you, Mom. All those years of carefully budgeting, of counting pennies, of making sure I had what I needed, even when you went without. For the first time, I really saw it. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I remained silent, allowing her to continue. It hit me even harder when I got to Princeton, Jessica went on. My first week here, I met my professors and was so excited to tell them about myself. But every time I started to talk about my achievements, I kept hearing this voice in my head, asking who made those achievements possible, who worked so I could study instead of having a job in high school, who paid for the debate club trips and the honor society dues. She reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes filling with tears. It was you, Mom. It was always you. And I never saw it until it was gone. I'm so sorry. The words I had longed to hear for months washed over me like a healing balm. I squeezed her hand, my own tears falling freely now. I didn't take your college fund to punish you, I explained. I took it because you needed to understand its value, to appreciate what it represented. Jessica nodded. I get it now. I really do. Working has shown me exactly what you sacrificed all those years. 20 hours a week exhausts me. You worked 60, 70 hours every week for my entire life. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the significance of this breakthrough. So, Jessica said, finally wiping her eyes. What happens now? That depends on you, I replied honestly. The money is still there. I've kept it safe. You'll give it back? She asked, hope lighting her features. I shook my head gently. I won't give it back, I clarified. But I'll share it with you, as partners. You'll continue working part-time, and I'll contribute from the fund to cover the rest. We'll make financial decisions together with full transparency about where the money comes from and what it costs to provide it. Jessica considered this, then nodded slowly. That seems fair. There's one more thing, I added. I'd like you to come home for Thanksgiving, not to the Wilsons. Home. For the first time in our conversation, Jessica smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I'd like that," she said. "I miss my room. I miss—" She hesitated, then finished simply, "I miss you, Mom." The words filled an empty space in my heart that had ached for months. "I miss you too, sweetheart." Jessica glanced at her watch and sighed. "I have class in 15 minutes, but can I show you something first?" Of course. She led me across campus to a stately building with large windows. "This is the English department," she explained, holding the door for me. "Come meet Professor Abernathy." I followed her into a comfortable office where a gray-haired woman was reviewing papers. She looked up and smiled warmly when she saw Jessica. Professor Jessica said, her voice filled with a pride I hadn't heard before, "I'd like you to meet my mother, Corinne. Not my mom. Not 'this is Corinne,' but my mother, spoken with respect and even a touch of reverence." The professor stood and extended her hand. "I've been looking forward to meeting you, Mrs. Johnson. Jessica has told me so much about your incredible work ethic and determination. You've raised a remarkable young woman." As we shook hands, I glanced at Jessica in surprise. She blushed slightly, but held my gaze. "I tell all my professors about you now," she admitted later as we walked back across campus. "About how you raised me alone while working multiple jobs. About how you taught me the value of education by sacrificing your own." She paused, then added quietly, "I'm not embarrassed anymore, Mom. I'm proud." Those words meant more than any acknowledgement at a graduation dinner ever could. We had both learned valuable lessons over the past months. Jessica had learned about gratitude and the true cost of opportunity, while I had learned that sometimes the hardest parenting decisions are the most necessary ones. As we said goodbye near the library where she worked, Jessica hugged me tightly. "I'll see you at Thanksgiving," she promised. "And Mom, thank you. Not just for the money, but for caring enough to teach me what matters, even when it hurt us both." I watched her walk away toward her class, her posture straighter than before, carrying not just books, but a new understanding of her place in the world. The painful months of separation had been worth it for this transformation. A daughter who recognized her privileges as responsibilities rather than entitlements. True growth often comes through hardship, I thought, as I headed back to my car. By emptying Jessica's college fund, I had filled her with something far more valuable: character, gratitude, and the knowledge that she was capable of earning her own success. As parents, our deepest love sometimes requires making the hardest choices. For Jessica and me, that difficult lesson had ultimately strengthened our bond in ways that simple financial support never could. Have you ever had to teach your child a difficult lesson about gratitude or responsibility? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about the challenges and triumphs of parenthood. Remember, sometimes the hardest decisions we make for our children are the ones that help them grow the most.